She had 15 years of experience spotting fraud. She told me that herself twice, while she was tearing my mother's surgery money into confetti. 15 years. And she still got it wrong. My name is Mark Hollister. I'm 44 years old. I grew up in Lawrenceville, back when it was still a neighborhood full of guys who worked with their hands. And 3 months ago, I walked into a bank on Penn Avenue wearing the same work boots I wear every day, holding a check for $5 million. And the branch manager looked me dead in the eye and told a room full of strangers I was a liar. The branch manager was my ex-wife. You'd think after 12 years of marriage she'd at least recognize my signature. But I'm getting ahead of myself. If I tell you about the bank first, you won't understand why I just stood there and took it. You'll think I'm weak. So let's go back. Let's go back to a Sunday dinner in the spring of 2011, at a table I didn't belong at, in a house that was never mine. Welcome to Dad's Raw Revenge. Get comfortable. This story is going to take you somewhere. Hit that like button and drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from. Trust me, you're going to love it here. Rachel's parents lived out in Fox Chapel, in one of those houses with a circular driveway. Her father, Gerald, made his money in commercial real estate. Her mother, Beverly, made her money by marrying Gerald. Her sister Jessica had married a guy named David. Not the David from the bank, a different one. This was years before. Keep up. I drove out there in my Silverado, the one with 190,000 miles on it, and a check engine light that had been on so long I'd started to think of it as a decorative feature. I parked it behind Jessica's Audi like a kid parking his bike behind a Ferrari lot. Here we go again. Dinner started fine. It always started fine. Gerald said grace. Beverly passed the green beans. And then, somewhere between the second glass of wine and the dessert nobody needed, Gerald turned to me with that look, the one where a man's already decided what he thinks of you and is just performing the question for sport. So, Mark, he set down his fork. How's the little machine shop coming along? Still fixing other people's broken things. I chewed. I swallowed. I took my time. Building, mostly. Fixing pays the light bill. Building's where the future is. He nodded like I'd said something cute. And how's the future treating you, Dad? Rachel's voice quick, embarrassed, but not embarrassed for me. Embarrassed of me. There's a difference, and if you've never felt it, consider yourself lucky. Jessica leaned over her wine glass, smirking. At least he's working, Dad. Even if it's not, a real career. A real career. I'd started that shop in a rented garage on Heron Avenue with a used lathe I bought off a guy who was closing his own place down. Slept maybe 4 hours a night for 2 years. By year 5, I had 20 guys on payroll. By year 8, we were doing numbers that would have made Gerald choke on his Cabernet if I'd ever bothered to tell him. I never told him. Why give a man ammunition he doesn't even know he's holding? I looked at Rachel, just for a second, waiting for the smallest thing, a hand on my knee under the table. He's doing great, actually. Anything. She looked down at her plate and cut her chicken into smaller pieces than it needed to be. That was the moment, not the dinner, not Gerald. That was the moment I understood something I'd suspected for a while and hadn't wanted to admit. It wasn't just her family that thought I was less than. She thought it too, and she was never going to say otherwise, not even to save me an ounce of dignity at her parents' table. I finished my chicken. I said thank you for the meal. I drove home in the Silverado with the check engine light glowing like it was mocking me personally. The marriage didn't end with a bang. It ended the way most things end in real life. Slow, quiet. Over years, like a tire losing air so gradually you don't notice until you're on the rim. By 2018, we barely talked unless it was about our son Cole. I'd get home from the shop covered in metal dust, and Rachel would already be on the couch with her laptop, doing whatever it is bank managers do at home, which turns out is mostly emailing about other people's overdraft fees. You're late again, she said one night, not looking up. Had a machine go down. Had to fix it myself, nobody else on shift knew the wiring. Right. A pause. Jessica's David just made VP. Regional. Good for David. He'll be running 4 branches by next year. I stood there in my work boots, grease under my nails, and I understood exactly what she was doing. She wasn't telling me about David. She was telling me about the life she thought she should have had. 12 years, and she's still doing math on who she married. I'm gonna shower, I said. Mark. She finally looked up. And for 1 second, 1 single second, I thought maybe she'd say something real. Something that wasn't about David's promotion, or her father's chandelier, or anybody else's whole entire life except ours. Never mind, she said. It's not important. 6 months later, she filed. Her lawyer was a shark in a blazer, the kind of guy who bills you for the time it takes to say hello. Mine was a guy named Frank Kowalski, who I'd known since high school and who did the whole thing for the price of fixing his daughter's transmission. Rachel sat across the table in the conference room, arms crossed, jaw set like she was daring me to make it hard. I want the house, she said. I want primary custody. And I don't want this dragged out, Mark. I want to move on with my life. I could have fought her. Frank told me flat out, you've got the income, you've got the case, don't just roll over. And he was right, I did have the income by then. The shop was doing 7 figures. She had no idea. Nobody did. I kept it that way on purpose. But I looked across that table at the mother of my son, and I thought about Cole, 11 years old, already scared, already asking me in the car if Mommy and Daddy hated each other now. You're a good man, Mark. Rachel said it flat, like a line she'd rehearsed in the mirror. But good isn't enough. It was never going to be enough. 12 years boiled down to 5 words. Good isn't enough. Okay, I said. Frank looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Mark. Okay, I said again. She can have the house. I signed. My hand didn't shake. I want you to understand that. My hand did not shake, because somewhere in that year I'd already decided something important. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life trying to win an argument with people who'd already made up their minds about who I was. I moved into a 1-bedroom off Butler Street, 2 blocks from where my dad's old shop used to be. I paid child support a week early every single month, for 6 straight years. I never missed a soccer game. Not one. I sat on the visitor's side in a folding chair, in whatever weather Pittsburgh decided to throw at us, and I clapped louder than anybody. Rachel remarried within 2 years. A bank executive. Confident guy. Expensive watch, talked about market positioning at kids' birthday parties like anybody asked. Cole liked him fine. I never said a bad word about him. Not once. You don't win a kid's respect by tearing down the other guy. You win it by being the guy who shows up. Here's the part nobody at that Fox Chapel dinner table ever asked about, because nobody thought to ask. After the divorce, I put everything into Hollister Precision. Not to prove Rachel wrong. I want to be honest with you. It wasn't about her anymore. It was the only thing I had left that was fully completely mine. We made precision components, aerospace fittings, medical device parts, stuff that has to be accurate down to a fraction most people can't even picture. Boring work if you don't love it. I loved it. By 2022, we'd grown past what Pittsburgh alone could support, so we opened a second facility out in Cranberry Township. 40 employees, then 60. A private equity group out of Philadelphia started sniffing around in early 2023. They'd heard about our contract with a medical device company out of Cleveland and wanted in. I sat in a conference room downtown, on the 11th floor of a building, with a view of all 3 rivers, and I signed papers that turned 20 years of grease and bad coffee and 4 hours of sleep nights into more money than I'd ever expected to see in one lifetime. I didn't tell anyone about the acquisition, not Cole, not my mother, not a single soul at that Fox Chapel table. But the money had to go somewhere, so my accountant moved it into a private banking account at 3 Rivers Trust, the same bank Rachel worked for, though I didn't know it at the time. A few months later, I got a letter inviting me to a fundraising gala for the Children's Hospital wing at 3 Rivers Medical Center. I almost didn't go, but something made me. Maybe the fact that my mother was getting older. Maybe the fact that I wanted to see the hospital where she might one day need care. I wrote a check for $2 million, under a corporate name, no plaque, no press release. I didn't want the recognition. I just wanted to help. A man in a gray suit shook my hand at the reception. David, the regional VP. He thanked me for my generosity. He had no idea who I really was. He had no idea his sister-in-law's ex-husband was the one writing the check. And I didn't tell him, because that's not why I did it. But that handshake, that brief moment, that's what I'd be thinking about when he walked through the bank doors a year later and called me sir. The money wasn't the point. The money was never the point. The money was for one thing and one thing only, and I hadn't figured out yet what that thing would be. I found out 8 months later. That's when my mother called. My mother, Linda, was 71 years old, still lived in the same house on Fisk Street she raised us in. Still made her own pierogies from scratch every Christmas even though her hands had started shaking a little the last few years. She was the only person in my entire life who never once asked me why I settled for the shop. You built something with your own 2 hands, Mark, she told me once, sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of tea. Your father would have been so proud of you. I don't care what Rachel's family thinks. I never did. She never doubted me, not once, even when everyone else did. So in the fall of 2023, when she called me, voice shaking, not from age this time, and told me her back pain wasn't just back pain, I dropped everything. Mark, she said, the doctor found something on my spine. I was at Cole's soccer practice when she called. I remember exactly where I was standing, right by the fence, near the parking lot, with the smell of cut grass and somebody's kid's Gatorade spilled on the pavement. What kind of something, Mom? They're saying I need surgery. Soon. A pause. Her voice cracked. Mark, they're saying if I don't do it soon, I might not walk again. The ground doesn't actually drop out from under you. It just feels that way. I'm coming over right now, I said. Mark, don't worry about the cost. We'll figure. Mom, I said I'm coming over. I hung up. I stood there by that chain link fence for a second, watching Cole run drills he didn't even know his grandmother was in trouble during, and I thought about every dollar that 11-story conference room had put in my account. So that's what it was for. I just didn't know yet how bad the fight to spend it was going to get, or who was going to be standing behind the counter when I tried. You ever notice how the worst days always start out looking completely normal? No dark clouds, no omen, just a Tuesday. That's how it went. 41 hours after my mother's phone call, I was standing in the kitchen of my one-bedroom on Butler Street at 6 in the morning, staring at a bank check for $5 million like it might catch fire if I looked at it too long. 48-hour window. The hospital doesn't do payment plans on a spine. I'd spent the day before wiring funds out of the acquisition account, working the phone with my accountant, a guy named Tom Reyes who'd handled my books since the shop was still just me in a rented garage. Tom didn't ask questions. Tom just moved money. You sure about the timeline, Mark? He'd asked. This is a lot of liquidity to move that fast. My mother's got 48 hours before they cancel the surgery, Tom. I don't care about the timeline. I care about the deadline. He didn't argue with me again. By 6 the next morning, I had a cashier's check in a manila envelope, and I had exactly one place I could get it processed fast enough to beat the hospital's clock, the branch on Penn Avenue, because that's where the acquisition account had been moved for private banking services 6 months earlier, on the recommendation of a hospital board member I'd met at a fundraiser. Funny how that works out. Funny how things line up sometimes in ways you don't see coming. Cole was staying with me that week. Rachel and I split custody, and it happened to fall on my days. He was 15 now, taller than me by an inch, still wore his hair a little too long the way Rachel hated. You want me to come with you? He asked, standing in the kitchen doorway in a hoodie, watching me put on a clean flannel shirt like it was armor. You don't have to, bud. I want to. He shrugged, the way 15-year-olds shrug when they actually mean something and don't want you to know it. Grandma's gonna be there, right? She's meeting us there. Your aunt's driving her. Then I'm coming. I should have said no. I think about that a lot. I should have just said no. The Silverado's check engine light was still on. Some things never change. And I'd stopped fighting it. The truck ran fine. The light was just there to remind me of my own stubbornness, I guess. We drove down Penn Avenue with the windows cracked, the smell of a bakery 2 blocks from the bank drifting through the cab. Somebody was baking kolache that morning. Sweet and yeasty, completely wrong smell for the day that was about to happen. Dad. Cole was looking at his phone, scrolling. You good? You've been quiet. Just thinking about Grandma. She's gonna be fine, right? I didn't know that. Nobody knew that. That's the thing about hope. It's not the same thing as a promise. And I wasn't going to hand my kid a promise I couldn't back up. She's gonna have the best doctors in the state operating on her tomorrow morning, I said instead. That's the truth I can give you. He nodded, went back to his phone. I turned onto the block where the bank sat, a squat brick building with brass letters on the glass. 3 Rivers Trust. And I parked the Silverado in a spot 2 doors down from a coffee shop that used to be a hardware store when I was a kid. Here we go. The lobby was busier than I expected for a Tuesday morning. Line of maybe 8 people. 2 tellers working the counter, a security guard by the door checking his phone, and behind the glass partition of the manager's office, I could see her. Rachel, navy blazer, hair pulled back tight, laughing at something a customer said, one hand resting on the edge of her desk like she owned the whole building. She looks good. She always looked good. That was never the problem. My mother was already there, sitting in her wheelchair near the entrance, my sister-in-law Jessica standing beside her scrolling through her phone. Linda's hands were folded in her lap, and when she saw me come through the door, her whole face changed. Relief, fear, love, all tangled up together. Mark. She reached her hand out. I crossed the lobby fast and took it. Hey, Mom. You doing okay? I'm nervous, she admitted. This is a lot of money to be walking around with, isn't it? It's just paper until it clears, Mom. Don't worry about it. Jessica looked up from her phone, gave me a tight little smile that never made it to her eyes. Mark. Didn't expect to see you here. Needed to make a deposit. At this branch. Something in her voice. I clocked it, filed it away. She knows Rachel manages this branch. She's fishing. It's where the account's set up, I said, and left it at that. I got in line behind an older man arguing quietly with a teller about a hold on his check, and Cole stood next to me, hands jammed in his hoodie pocket, watching everything with the particular alertness of a kid who can feel something is wrong before he can name it. 3 people ahead of me. 2. 1. Next, please. The teller was young, maybe 22. Name tag said Brittany. Nice smile, nervous energy, like she was still new enough to be scared of messing something up. Morning. What can I help you with today? I need to deposit this. I slid the envelope across the counter. It's time sensitive. Has to clear today if at all possible. It's for a medical procedure. She opened the envelope. I watched her eyes move across the check. Watched them go wide. Sir, this is... She looked up at me, then back down. This is $5 million. That's right. I'm okay. I need to get my manager for a check this size. That's just our policy. 1 second. Standard procedure. Nothing wrong yet. Everything's fine. Except it wasn't fine, because I watched Brittany walk that check straight into Rachel's office, and I watched Rachel look up from her computer, take the check in her hand, and read the amount, and I watched her face change. She looked up, through the glass partition, straight at me. 12 years of divorce, and she can still find me in a crowded room in under 2 seconds. Funny what stays with people. She stood up so fast her chair rolled back and hit the wall behind her desk. She came out of that office like she was walking into a fight she'd already decided she was going to win. Mark? Loud. On purpose loud. What is this? Rachel. I kept my voice level. It's a deposit. For my mother's surgery. It needs to clear today. She held the check up between 2 fingers like it was something she'd found on the bottom of her shoe. $5 million? She let out a laugh. Short, sharp, humorless. You're handing my teller a check for $5 million? Yes, Mark. She said my name like it was a diagnosis. You couldn't make a car payment on time in 2019. I had to call you twice about Cole's school fees last spring. And now you're standing in my bank telling me you've got $5 million sitting in an account? She's not asking. She's performing. Look around, Mark. She's got an audience now. The lobby had gone quiet. Not silent, but that particular hush where 8 strangers all suddenly become very interested in a conversation that isn't theirs. Rachel, please. Just verify the account. It'll take you 2 minutes. You know what I think this is? She turned, half toward the lobby now, playing to the room. I think this is a scam check. I think you printed this on a home computer. I've been doing this job 15 years, Mark. I know what fraud looks like. Mom. Cole's voice, quiet, urgent, right beside me. Mom, what are you? She didn't even look at him. She didn't even look at her own son. Rachel. I kept my hands flat on the counter, kept my voice down even as hers climbed. You're making a scene over nothing. Call the account verification line. It'll take 60 seconds. I don't need 60 seconds. Her eyes were bright now, that particular brightness people get when they think they're winning. I know exactly what this is. This is you, showing up in my bank, trying to embarrass me with some prop, some fake number because you can't stand that I moved on and built a real life. There it is. This was never about the check. Rachel, my mother's in a wheelchair 15 feet from you, and she needs this money in the next 24 hours, or she doesn't walk again. Please, I'm asking you nicely, verify the check. For half a second, something flickered behind her eyes. Doubt, maybe. A crack. Then Jessica, standing near my mother with her phone already up and recording, said just loud enough to carry, "Oh my God, is this real? Is he seriously trying to pull this?" And that crack closed right back up. Rachel looked down at the check in her hands. She didn't tear it immediately. She held it up to the light, examining it like she was looking for a flaw. And then she smiled, that cruel smile I remembered from 12 years of marriage. The same smile she'd worn at the Fox Chapel dinner table when her father made his little comments. "You really think I'm going to fall for this?" she said, loud enough for the whole lobby to hear. "You think you can walk in here with some prop, some fake number, and embarrass me in front of my own branch?" She looked at the check again. She looked at me. She was enjoying this. She was performing. And then she tore it. Not gently. Not hesitantly. She tore it in half with both hands, the way you tear a piece of junk mail you don't want. And then she did it again. Quarters now. The sound of it, that specific ripping sound, paper and ink, and 48 hours of frantic phone calls with Tom Reyes and a hospital deadline, splitting clean down the middle. I don't think I'll ever forget that sound as long as I live. And then she opened her hand and let the pieces fall, some of them fluttering onto the counter. One piece landing right in front of my mother's wheelchair. She did that on purpose. She wanted Mom to see it land. "Get out of my bank," Rachel said, and her voice was shaking now, but not with doubt, with something meaner than that, "before I have you removed." Behind me, I heard my mother make a sound I can only describe as a sob trying not to be a sob. "Rachel," Cole started, and his voice cracked right down the middle, same as that check. "Mom, that's Dad's account. Why would he lie about—" "Cole, go sit down." She snapped it at him without even turning her head. 15 years old, and she just told her son to sit down and shut up in front of a room full of strangers. The security guard was moving now, drawn by the noise. A heavy-set man in his 50s who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Sir." He put a hand near my shoulder, not touching, but close. "I'm going to need you to step outside." "I haven't done anything," I said. "And I want you to know." My voice didn't shake. Not once. Not through any of it. I tried to make a deposit. "He's harassing my staff," Rachel announced, loud to the whole lobby now, playing the room like she was born for it. "He's my ex-husband. He's been unstable since the divorce. Please, everyone, this isn't anything. Go back to your business." Unstable. She called me unstable. In front of my son. I looked at my mother. Linda Hollister, 71 years old, sitting in a wheelchair with a piece of a $5 million check by her feet, tears running down a face that had never once in 44 years doubted me. And for the first time I saw something in her eyes that looked an awful lot like doubt. "Mark," she whispered, "what did you do?" That was the worst part. Not Rachel's voice, not the security guard's hand near my shoulder. My mother asking me what I'd done, like I was the one who'd lied. "Mom, I promise you this is real. I promise you." "Sir, I need you to step outside now." The guard's grip found my elbow, gentle but firm. I didn't fight him. You want to know why I didn't fight him? Because I'd spent 12 years learning that fighting people who've already decided who you are doesn't change their minds. It just gives them a story to tell about you afterward. I looked at Rachel one last time. She was breathing hard, chest rising and falling, riding the high of a room that, for one single humiliating minute, believed every word she said. "You're going to want to check that account," I told her, quiet enough that only she could hear it. "Before you say another word, get out." I turned toward the door. Cole was already moving to my mother's wheelchair, gripping the handles, his jaw tight the way it gets when he's trying not to cry in public. Inherited that from me, I think. That particular stubbornness. Jessica was still filming. Smiling now, actually smiling like she'd just captured something for a highlight reel. She has no idea what she's about to send to that family group chat. The security guard walked me the last 10 feet to the door, one hand still near my elbow like I might bolt. I didn't. I stood there, hearing the ripped pieces of that check still settling on the floor somewhere behind me, and for just a second I let myself feel the whole weight of it. The 12 years, the Fox Chapel dinner table, the divorce papers, the years of showing up and saying nothing, all of it pressing down at once. 48-hour window, and she just burned 2 hours of it for a show. That's when the glass door behind me opened. A man in a charcoal suit walked in, briefcase in one hand, moving with the particular unhurried confidence of somebody who's never once in his life had to wait in a line. He scanned the lobby, the scattered paper on the floor, the security guard, my mother crying in her wheelchair, Rachel standing there breathing hard behind the counter. And then his eyes landed on me. His whole face changed. "Mark," he said it loud enough that the entire lobby heard it. "Mark Hollister, is that you?" I turned around. Rachel's face went the color of printer paper. "David," I said, "good to see you." And that right there is where everything in that lobby was about to come apart at the seams. What happened in the next 90 seconds is the part you came here for. If you have been listening for a while, drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button while you're at it, and be sure you're subscribed. You ever watch someone's whole world rearrange itself in real time? I have. I watched it happen on a Tuesday morning in a bank lobby on Penn Avenue, and I'm telling you, it is not a fast process. It happens in stages. Confusion first, then denial. Then that horrible sinking, oh God moment where the floor gives out from under you. Rachel went through all 3 stages in about 11 seconds. "David?" Her voice came out smaller than I'd ever heard it. You two know each other?" David set his briefcase down on the counter, still looking at me like he was doing math in his head, connecting dots. "Mark sits on the development board for St. Anthony's," he said, not even looking at her yet. "He funded the West Wing renovation 2 years back. $2 million out of his own pocket, no press release, no plaque with his name on it. I had to practically beg him to let us put a small one up in the lobby." He turned to me, hand extended. "Good to see you, Mark. What brings you down here?" Here's the thing about a small city. Pittsburgh likes to pretend it's big. It's not. Everybody's 4 handshakes from everybody else, and today, that math finally caught up with somebody. "David." I shook his hand, trying to deposit a check for my mother's surgery. Ran into a little trouble. His eyes moved past me, to the security guard still hovering near my elbow, to my mother in her wheelchair with tears on her face, to Cole standing rigid beside her, and finally down to the floor, to the torn pieces of paper scattered across the tile like confetti nobody wanted. David crouched down, picked up one of the larger pieces, turned it over in his fingers. I watched his jaw tighten. "Is this?" He looked up at Rachel. "Is this the check?" Nobody answered him. "Rachel." His voice had changed. Same volume, completely different weight. "Is this the check?" She swallowed. "I thought it was fraudulent. Sir, I've been doing this 15 years. I know how to spot. You tore up a $5 million cashier's check." He wasn't yelling. That was the worst part. He didn't need to. In my lobby, in front of 8 customers, without calling the verification line first. "He's my ex-husband." The words came out fast now, desperate, grabbing for anything. "David, you don't understand the history here. He's never had money. This is some kind of stunt. Some kind of—" "Rachel." David set the torn piece of paper down gently on the counter, like evidence at a crime scene. "Mr. Hollister has been a private banking client of this branch for months. All it would have taken was a 2-minute verification call instead of a performance. 6 months. She'd walked past my account information for 6 months and never once looked." Rachel's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "Sir." Brittany, the young teller, was standing frozen behind the counter, looking like she badly wanted to be anywhere else on earth. Do you want me to call the verification line now?" "Yes, Brittany." David didn't take his eyes off Rachel. "Please do." David turned to face me fully now, and the whole lobby, every single person still standing there pretending not to watch, went dead quiet. "Sir." He said it plain, no drama, just fact. "I am deeply sorry for what just happened. This is not how we treat clients at Three Rivers Trust, and it's certainly not how we treat a man trying to get emergency funds to a hospital. Let me handle this personally right now. Sir." 1 word. 12 years, and 1 word undid more damage than I could have done with 100 arguments. I heard Jessica's phone lower slightly, like her arm had forgotten what it was doing. I heard my mother make a small sound behind me, not a sob this time, something closer to disbelief. "Mark," her voice small from the wheelchair. "Mark, what does he mean, sir?" I turned around and knelt down next to her, taking her hand. "It means everything's going to be okay, Mom. It means your surgery's happening tomorrow morning." I'm not going to pretend that moment wasn't sweet. It was, but it wasn't sweet because Rachel got humiliated. It was sweet because my mother finally believed me. David had Brittany process a new check on the spot, wire the funds directly to the hospital's account instead of risking another physical check getting lost, torn, or mishandled. 20 minutes. That's all it took once somebody actually did their job. 20 minutes after 2 hours of humiliation. Funny how that works. While Brittany typed, David stood next to Rachel's office door, arms crossed, waiting, not saying anything else to her. He didn't need to. Silence can do more work than yelling ever could, and Rachel stood there in that silence like she was standing in a spotlight she desperately wanted turned off. Mark. Cole's hand landed on my shoulder. I looked up at my son, 15 years old, jaw still tight, eyes red around the edges but dry now. Is Grandma really going to be okay? She's going to be okay, bud. He looked over at his mother, standing behind that counter with her arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. He didn't say anything to her. He just looked. And something about the way he looked told me he wasn't going to forget this morning for a long, long time. I didn't gloat. I want to be clear about that because I know what you might be expecting right now. Some big speech, some mic drop moment where I tell Rachel exactly what I think of her in front of the whole lobby. I didn't do that. You don't win by matching someone's cruelty. You win by refusing to become it. Instead, I stood up, thanked David, shook his hand again, and told Brittany she'd handled herself well under pressure. She had. Better than her manager, and I made sure David heard me say it. Then I turned to Cole and my mother. Let's get you home, Mom. Big day tomorrow. Mark, Rachel's voice from behind the counter. Quiet now. Almost unrecognizable from the woman who'd been performing for a room 20 minutes earlier. Mark, wait. I stopped. Didn't turn around right away. Took my time. Rachel. I didn't. She stopped. Started again. I didn't know. 12 years of not knowing. Not asking. Not once wondering if maybe, just maybe, the man she wrote off might be more than what she'd decided he was. I know you didn't, I said. That's kind of the whole problem. I turned and walked out, pushing my mother's wheelchair through the glass doors, Cole beside me, into a Pittsburgh morning that smelled like Kalache and rain that hadn't quite started falling yet. I didn't look back to see Rachel's face. I didn't need to. I'd spent enough of my life watching that face for cues about whether I was allowed to feel good about myself. I was done doing that. The next morning, my mother went into surgery at 7:15 at a hospital I'd helped fund 2 years earlier without telling a soul, in a West Wing with a small plaque near the elevator bay that said nothing about dollar amounts. Just, in gratitude to the families who make healing possible. Cole and I sat in the waiting room for 6 hours. We ate vending machine pretzels and bad coffee. He fell asleep against my shoulder around hour 4, the way he used to when he was little, before the divorce, before Fox Chapel dinners, before any of it. At 1:30, the surgeon came out in scrubs, mask pulled down around his neck, tired but smiling. Mr. Hollister, surgery went great. Clean decompression, no complications. She's going to need some rehab, but she'll walk again. Full recovery expected. Full recovery expected. I don't cry easy, never have. But I put my head down in that waiting room and let a couple tears go because I'd been carrying 48 hours of terror. And I finally got to set it down. Cole hugged me right there in the hallway, in front of strangers, and neither of us cared who saw. Here's the thing about humiliating someone in a room full of witnesses. You don't get to control what happens after you walk away. Jessica's video hit the family group chat by that evening. She hadn't deleted it, hadn't even thought to apparently, too busy basking in what she thought was a viral moment of catching me in a lie. Except the video didn't end where she wanted it to. It kept rolling. It caught David walking in. It caught the words "Sir" and $5 million acquisition and St. Anthony's West Wing. It caught Rachel's face going white as printer paper. By Wednesday night, Gerald, Rachel's father, the man who'd spent a decade asking me about my little machine shop over dinner, called me directly. First time he'd called me in 6 years. Mark. His voice was stiff, formal. A man clearly working through several stages of eating crow in real time. I saw the video Jessica sent around. I had no idea about the business, the acquisition, any of it. Nobody did, Gerald. That was the point. Silence on the line. Well, I just wanted to say, I hope your mother recovers well. 12 years of small comments about my truck, my shop, my worth as a man, and that's the apology I got. I hope your mother recovers well. She's recovering fine, thanks, I said, and let him sit in the silence a moment longer than he probably wanted, before hanging up. I didn't need Gerald's approval anymore. I want you to understand that. I wasn't waiting on it, but it's a particular kind of satisfying, watching a man who spent a decade underestimating you finally realize the math never worked the way he thought it did. I heard about the group chat secondhand. Cole showed me the messages a few days later, scrolling through his phone with a strange look on his face. Part disbelief, part something I couldn't quite name. Rachel's own mother was the first to break ranks. She did what to a $5 million check? In front of customers? Is she out of her mind? Then her father. This is going to follow her for years. Everyone at the bank saw this. Jessica scrambling to distance herself. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I thought it was a scam. Not one person defended her. 12 years of that family closing ranks around Rachel. And the first time she actually needed them, they were busy calculating the damage to their own reputations. I didn't gloat when I saw those messages. I just felt tired. Tired of being right. Tired of watching people scramble to rewrite history once the truth finally caught up with them. Three Rivers Trust opened a formal review into Rachel's conduct by that Friday. Turns out humiliating a major private client in a full lobby on camera, without following verification procedure, is the kind of thing banks take seriously. Not because I demanded anything, not because I called anybody, but because David filed the incident report himself before I'd even made it home. She was suspended pending investigation. 2 weeks later, she was let go entirely. Not fired for being cruel to me. Banks don't fire you for being a bad person. They fired her for exposing them to liability. For the video. For the complaints from customers in that lobby who'd watched the whole thing and didn't love what they saw either. I never asked for that. I want to be honest with you about that. I never once called Three Rivers Trust and said fire her. I didn't have to. Actions have consequences whether or not you go looking for them. The hardest conversation wasn't with Rachel. It was with my son. He showed up at my apartment about a week later, hoodie on, hands in his pockets. That particular 15-year-old posture that's trying to look casual and failing completely. Dad, can we talk? Course, bud. Sit down. He sat across from me at my little kitchen table. The same table, same apartment. No bigger, no fancier. Because I never saw the point in upgrading just to prove something to people who weren't paying attention anyway. Why didn't you tell me? His voice cracked a little on the question. About the money. About all of it. You let me think we were just getting by. You let me think Mom's version of things was true. I thought about how to answer that honestly. Because he deserved honesty, not a speech. I didn't build the business to prove your mother wrong, Cole. I built it because it was mine. And because I needed something that was fully mine after the divorce. And I didn't talk about the money because the money wasn't for showing off. It was for your grandmother. It was always going to be for something like this. I just didn't know what, yet, when I signed those papers. She's been telling me for years you weren't trying hard enough. His jaw worked. I believed her. I used to feel embarrassed about your truck, Dad. I used to feel embarrassed about all of it. That one landed harder than anything Rachel said in that bank lobby. Harder than Gerald's decade of little comments. My own kid, embarrassed of me. You were a kid hearing one side of a story from the parent you lived with, I said. That's not a character flaw, Cole. That's just what happens to kids in a divorce. The only thing that matters now is what you believe going forward. He was quiet a long moment. I believe in you, Dad. He looked up at me. I should have asked more questions a long time ago. You're asking them now. That's enough. Rachel called me about 3 weeks after everything, late on a Sunday night. I could tell from her voice she'd had a couple drinks, and I could tell she'd been building up to the call for a while. Mark, I owe you an apology, a real one. Okay, I was cruel to you, in front of everyone, in front of Cole, in front of your mother. I keep thinking about the look on her face when I tore that check up, and her voice caught. I was so sure I had you figured out. I'd had you figured out for 12 years, and I was wrong about all of it. You know what's funny? I'd spent months, years maybe, imagining a moment where Rachel finally admitted she was wrong. I used to think it would feel like winning. It didn't feel like winning. It just felt like closure, which it turns out is worth a whole lot more. I appreciate you saying that, I said. I mean that. Are we okay? For Cole's sake, I mean. We're okay, Rachel. I'm not interested in punishing you. I never was. That was never the plan. Then what was the plan? I thought about it for a second before I answered. There wasn't one. I just wanted to get my mother into surgery. Everything else that happened because of what you and I both did, not because I set out to destroy anything. You did that part yourself. She didn't have a response for that. I let the silence sit there a moment, and then I told her good night. And I meant it kindly, because I genuinely didn't need to carry any more weight than I already had. My mother walks now, slower than she used to, uses a cane on bad days, but she walks. She made pierogies again this past Christmas, hands a little shakier than before, and not one of us cared if they came out lopsided. Rachel found work at a smaller credit union out in Monroeville. Lower title, lower pay, I heard through Cole she's doing okay, keeping her head down. I don't wish her worse than that, I never did. Jessica sent me an apology text I never really responded to, because some things don't need a reply. And Cole spends most weekends at my place now. Not because the custody schedule says so, because he wants to. Last Saturday we sat on my little balcony eating sandwiches from the corner shop, watching the sun go down over Butler Street. And he said something I haven't stopped thinking about. You know what's crazy, Dad? You had every reason to make that whole thing worse. You could have had David fire Mom on the spot. You didn't. I told him it wasn't my job to punish anybody. That part takes care of itself. He nodded slow, like he was filing that away for later. That's the truth I've landed on, after all of it. The real victory was smaller than all that. A kid who used to be embarrassed of his father, sitting on a cheap balcony on a Saturday evening, choosing to be there. Everything else, the money, the bank, the apology calls, that was just noise. Loud, satisfying noise. But noise all the same. The quiet stuff is what actually stays with you. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from. I will see you on the next one.